the magic of meditation. We have a very special speaker. So can I request Sister Jayanti to come onto the stage? And just wave with one hand. Welcome, Sister Jayanti. We have a packed house. What can I say about Sister Jayanti? There's not much to say because she's the embodiment of spirituality. But who is here for the first time? Raise your hands high. Oh, welcome. We love to see new faces. And who's here for the very first time to see Sister Jayanti for the first time? So let me give you some introduction, those who don't know Sister Jayanti. Sister Jayanti is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris worldwide. She's been practicing Raj Yoga for nearly 60 years, and I've had the privilege of knowing her for nearly 30 years. Time has really flown by. And Sister Jayanti really encapsulates everything what Raj Yoga is about. She's a wonderful ambassador of what we teach and what Raj Yoga is in its essence. So I'm not going to take much of your time, and I'm going to go straight over to Sister Jayanti. Welcome, Sister Jayanti. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Pramjit Bhai, for that warm welcome. And it's lovely to see many, many friends and also some new ones. It was interesting to see the subtitle of the little video that we saw, Meditation Made Easy. Well, that is exactly what this evening is all about, because meditation has become fashionable. Am I right in saying that? In the 80s, I remember we had the Speaker of the House of Commons come to one of our programs, and he said, "I'm a closet meditator." Because at that time, if he'd said, "I'm a meditator," people would have raised their eyebrows maybe and challenged him maybe. And so he meditated alone. But today, it's become something quite fashionable. Maybe it's a sign of the times. Why? Because in a world that's moving so quickly, and in the last few months, it seems to be moving up and down day by day. A different story every day, a different version every day. We've never been through such chaotic times as we are now. Can I change all of that? Well, probably not. Too many things are going on for me to get a handle on them and manage them. But what I can do is to create a deep space of stability and calm within myself, so that I have the capacity to be able to deal with all the ups and downs that are going on around me. And that's much easier. Controlling things outside is next to impossible. There'll always be things that go out of my control. But controlling things within, maybe we can take a shot at that. Maybe we can attempt that and find ways in which we can experience that stillness inside, which can give me a very different perspective to what's going on outside. There's a very lovely saying in Hindi, and I'll share the Hindi words first because they nicely rhyme together. And some of you have heard this before. But then I'll also translate it into English. And the Hindi expression goes, Smriti, Vritti, Drishti, Kritti, Sanskriti, and Srishti. And what that means is, my awareness determines my attitude determines my vision will then determine my actions, and that will create the culture that we make, and that creates the world in which we live. Sounds nice? Well, apart from sounding nice, it's actually very, very true. Because whatever is in here, in my awareness, in my thinking, thoughts can come and go very, very quickly. But awareness is something much deeper, but it's based on my thinking. So my thoughts create my awareness. And my awareness then determines the attitude that I have. We weren't born with certain attitudes, but they got created. When a baby is born, it only knows about eating and drinking and sleeping. But gradually, there are certain attitudes that get created. And according to those attitudes, so then is the way in which I see you and I see the world. And accordingly will be my reaction, or maybe not my reaction, but my response, considered response. And as a result of that, then, I'm going to create around me the culture in which I live and the world in which I live. So each one of us is responsible for creating our own little worlds. And if there comes a time when we say, well, things aren't happening quite the way that we want, can I change them? Yes, I can. First, I can change my little world. But the beautiful thing about that is that that has an impact on everybody around me. And they discovered that every individual is able to influence at least 125 others. One individual, one act of kindness, long story of the research, which I won't attempt to go into now, but one individual doing an act of kindness is able to influence 125 others around them. And just imagine 125 others impacting people around them. And so you can see that it's not so difficult to change the world. It needs a tiny minority, but a powerful minority that is steadfast in its belief, in its conviction, and lives by those rules, that's going to be able to make an impact, and that tiny minority is able to influence the majority. Because once things reach critical mass, they happen automatically. Then things change very dramatically. And so the magic of meditation is, as I meditate, definitely it influences my family and friends, the people I work with. It goes further, and through them it touches many others. And so people today who believe that peace is possible and are ready to have a commitment to peace so that they live a life of peace and not just talk about it, once we're ready to do that, then I think the ideas spread and we're going to be able to create a world of peace, which is why we call this evening the magic of meditation, because on one level, peace seems so far away that it seems out of reach, almost impossible. But if we say, well, peace is impossible, what are we going to do? What are our choices and our options? Are we going to say, okay, let violence rule everything and we'll live with that? That's not human nature. When human nature believes in something, we are ready to struggle for it. We won't fight for peace. That won't happen. But we'll be very determined in the way we set about things and make sure that peace really happens. Why I say this is because the natural state of every human soul is of goodness, of kindness, of compassion. And so it's not just a story that good conquers evil, it's a reality. The goodness of human beings is going to make sure that there's a shift in the world and a world of peace truly comes about. I've been with the Brahma Kumaris most of my life. I was little when my mother and grandmother were introduced to this, so I grew up with some of these ideas. And in my teens, I challenged these ideas and thought that no, this isn't what the world is about. But I'm very fortunate that by the time I was 18, I came back to these ideas. And the things I've experienced since then is just a huge amount of change in the way people think. I'll give you one little story. I've been involved with a program called Spirit of Humanity, which started about 12 years ago. And it's been held in Iceland, except once, but every 2 years we hold it in Iceland. Why? Because people in government in Iceland welcomed these ideas and said, yes, we want to be part of this. Not many countries do that, but Iceland did. So every time we've had a program, the president invites us to their home, the mayor of Reykjavik hosts a reception for us, and the last few times, the prime minister of the country has also been with us. And 2 years ago, the prime minister at that time, she's now not in that role anymore, but she did an interview which is still available on the website of Spirit of Humanity. Check it out and you'll see her interview. And she talks about how it's so important for leaders, especially political leaders, to learn to meditate and have peace within. This year, the president, who is now a woman, came, and in the public session that we had, she said, all the problems we see around us in the world have been created by humans, and so it's our responsibility to solve them. Except that we've been trying to find solutions to all these problems outside, and all of them have failed. I think it's time to look inside and find the answers within. Even 5 years ago, I would not have expected a president of a country to say these things in public. It's happening. So I'm seeing that there's a sea change. There are more and more people recognizing that transformation has to happen inside. Spirituality is important, meditation is important. She sat with us for a meditation, again in public, and was not shy to have moist eyes at the end of the meditation. And she was just telling people, yes, it's time to meditate. So I am seeing that when leaders begin to talk about these things in public, it's an indication that something is reaching them. And it's time for a different attitude, different vision, different activity, and a different world. And so, how do I experience all this for myself? Tonight is all about that. There's one particular aspect of the human being which is the most important aspect of the human being, but it very rarely gets mentioned in public. But meditation's very much all about that. And that is conscience. How often do you hear the word conscience? It's a word that's silent, but it's the most important word in terms of transformation. In Hindi, we would use the word vivek, but vivek would be part of something else bigger, buddhi. And meditation is that we teach here at the Brahma Kumaris, and there's many, many different types of meditation in the marketplace today. But the meditation we practice is Raj Yoga meditation. And Raj Yoga meditation is also called Buddhi Yoga. It's called Raj Yoga, but it's also called Buddhi Yoga. And the translation would be yoga of the intellect. Yoga, connection, union, communion, communication. So yoga, yes, the Hatha Yoga is wonderful. And if you're a practitioner, that's great. I'm sure it's keeping you in good shape and good health. But yoga is actually connection, communion, and Raj Yoga, communication, connection with the divine. But that's also Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi is that part of me, and the English word intellect doesn't actually do it justice, because Buddhi is bigger than what the word intellect has come to mean in daily language. But Buddhi is that part of me which understands, which reasons, which holds information, which is my guiding light. And part of the role of the Buddhi, the intellect, can I carry on using the word Buddhi? One Hindi word to remember. Okay, so Buddhi is also conscience. Vivek is part of what the Buddhi does. It's the vessel that holds all information, but also discerns what is useful to keep and what I need to discard. How much information you're exposed to all day. It's overload. And so in a very natural, automatic way, you see things and you say, okay, let me get on to the next thing. And things are discarded instantly. Things you need to reply, you'll reply. Things you need to remember, you'll try and remember, or you'll make a note of them. There'll be a lot of things that you'll just discard. So that's the Buddhi, the role of the Buddhi, to be able to discern all of that. But the Buddhi is also how I live my life, because it's constantly guiding me. And today's world is a sad story where the Buddhi has become dysfunctional. It isn't the guiding light anymore. It isn't functioning as it should, in the way that it should. And so, Buddhi Yoga. When I connect with the divine, then as a result of that connection, the Buddhi, the inner awareness, wakes up, the intellect awakens, and I'm able to begin a new chapter. And so, what has all this got to do with my life? Well, the reason that I need to learn to meditate is because I need to wake up my conscience. I need to awaken the Buddhi. I need to empower the Buddhi so that the decisions that I make, I can put through into my life. Let me take you through a circle. The thought comes, I put it through into action. That action leaves an imprint in two ways. It leaves an imprint inside, but it also leaves an imprint outside in terms of my actions have an impact on others around me and so on. And so that imprint then determines my next thought, and my next action. Right? Agree? Yeah? So this circle goes around. Did I forget something? I did. I forgot the most important. The role of the buddhi, the role of the intellect. Between thought and action, there should be that little pause in which I ask the question, should I not? And sometimes I have the thought, I should not, but I still do it. Been there? Sometimes. But that happens more frequently than we would like it. And so it keeps happening. And so what I need to do is to understand how to empower the buddhi so that it becomes functional again, so that it's now truly guiding me in my life and not just telling me what is right and wrong, but it's actually able to rise above the pull of the mind and my feelings and my emotions and make it actually happen. How often is it that feelings pull you in one way and your conscience is telling you something else? And who wins? You can flip a coin and see. You can't guarantee that it'll always be the conscience that wins. Very often it's the feelings that take over. And I'm not discarding feelings, but in a state of the world where there's a huge amount of darkness and negativity, I need to keep this light shining brightly. And then I can stay safe, but also I can make a positive contribution to the world around me. Because it is a very dark world, it is a very negative state that we're going through. It doesn't have to be like that, and we can make a difference. We can make a shift. But the shift is first in here, then the shift will happen out there also. So first step of meditation is to get to know myself. How well do I know myself? How do I identify myself? Do I identify myself with age, with race, with ethnicity, gender? Usually, that's how we would normally identify ourselves. But all of these are very external things. That's not who I really am. I am totally individual, absolutely unique, and definitely not visible to these eyes. So meditation means getting in touch with myself, with the inner being that I am. The being that's actually generating thoughts and feelings and awareness and has memory and has personality, all of these things. And these are the things inside. Then you see them expressed outside and they reveal themselves. But when you meet somebody, you see the physical form. You don't see what's going on in here. And sometimes we totally lose touch with what's going on inside. And so to get to know myself, I need to spend a little time in silence, a little time with myself. How do I get to know you? If I don't spend time with you, I'm never going to get to know you. But when I spend time with you, then I'll get to know you gradually. And so the more time I spend with myself, the more I'm going to get to know myself. When was the last time you had a conversation with yourself? Can you even remember? How long ago? Having a deep conversation with your partner, even that's a question. You talk about transactional things, but having a proper conversation from the heart, well, that doesn't happen so often, but it's even less that I have a conversation with myself. And that gives you an idea of how well you know yourself. And so taking time to be with me isn't selfish. It is vital, especially in today's world, if I want to survive. Even just to survive, I need to have time with myself. And so I get to know myself, and I see different layers. When I look at myself, I see the thoughts, I see the feelings, I see the emotions. And if I dare to go even deeper and spend more time with myself, I begin to see my beliefs, my conscience. And if I go even further, I begin to see patterns of behavior, and I begin to see the habits that I've created. Again, I wasn't born with habits, I created them. But there are underlying, unconscious patterns that I'm not even aware of. Age 18, I started this inner journey, and I had no idea that I had anger. I'd seen sorrow, I'd seen getting upset, but nothing beyond that. And it was a journey, and probably it was till I was 23, 24, something like that. I then began to see anger popping its head up, and I began to see how deep it was. And at a certain point, I decided I want to do something about it. And I started reversing the process to the point where no one can ever say never, but yeah, to a large extent, I would say that anger has been dealt with. Not suppressed, but it's been transformed. That's one example. But there must be many aspects that each one is carrying within the self that we don't know about. And we don't know at what time things are going to come up and be revealed. And I'd much rather deal with them now while things are a little bit quieter, a little bit calmer, and I can get to know myself a bit. So the journey inside is a real adventure. You don't know what you're going to find, but it's also a very beautiful journey because you're also discovering your deep-seated core values. Didn't know what my own core values were, but go through the journey and you discover what those core values are that you'd forgotten about. And again, why meditation is so important now more than any other time. A world in which things that were unimaginable are now a reality in a very negative way. I don't want to give you a list, you know them, you see them in the press, you see them on your devices. But at such a time, it's so important to know that this is not the natural state of humanity. The original natural state of humanity is of values. Values are the core of civilization. How could there be civilization if there were no values? So what's happened? We believe that civilization means values, but it's topsy-turvy. And so when you go on the inner journey and you connect with yourself and you realize that core values lie within you, within the inner being, the spirit, not the body, it's not my hands and feet, but it's deep within me. And it's like a new door opens. Then you know that yes, magic is possible. Because if this is the core of the human being, this is what has to now be expressed. And when we start expressing those inner core values in our life, there you go. You have a better world for all, not just for 1% or 10%, but you have a better world for everyone. No one is left behind. So in meditation, I'm going to the core of my being, the inner being, the soul. And there's a song that we used to sing as a child. Let the light keep shining, let the light shine on. It's all about the light shining. And so yes, I am the light. And when I forget myself, the light gets switched off. And when I know myself and I'm in touch with myself, the light shines. That's it. It's easy. And so it takes one thought, not years and years of study and practice, but one thought to come back to the awareness of the inner being and let the light shine. And in this awareness of the light shining, I rediscover my core values, the beauty of the spirit, the goodness, the compassion, the kindness, the truth, the joy, the peace that lies within. Now the trick is managing your life through the day, doing all the things that you need to do, but keep remembering to have the light shine, because all the things that you hear will try and switch off the light. What is the news you hear first thing in the morning? Does it switch on the light or does it switch off the light? 99% of the time it's switching it off. But I have to make the effort to keep my own light shining. And it's possible. And so that's the first step. Not to silence the mind. That's next to impossible. Not to force the mind, but with love, with kindness, lead the mind in this direction of the inner being, to generate those thoughts very consciously. Question for you. Through the day, how many thoughts are thoughts that you actively create, and how many thoughts are thoughts that come on autopilot? You see something and there's an automatic reaction. It's different for each one, but each one can just check. How many thoughts am I consciously creating? And how many are just coming, just simply reactions? So meditation means taking the time to consciously create thoughts to get to know myself and to get in touch with my own core values. And then second step, going inwards and then upwards. And that second step of going upwards, connecting to the source of peace, of love, of truth, and call the source by whatever name you wish. But again, that being of light. No human form, no angelic form, but just light, the supreme. And again, it takes just one thought to connect. That's all. It doesn't take hours and hours and hours. One thought and you connect. But you need to know where you're going, and you need to practice. Because you'll try and take your thought in one direction and there'll be many distractions that pull you off in another direction. But stay focused and keep moving in that direction to the source. And when I do this, because I'm already in a higher consciousness of the soul, I'll be able to make contact and I'll be able to experience the connection. Why so many people say, maybe there is a being who is God, maybe there isn't, is because the consciousness is totally caught up on this level. And so we are not in the frequency where we can experience the presence of the divine. But this first step of going inwards, and this higher consciousness of the spirit, the light, the soul, then I'm in tune and I'm able to catch the frequency of the divine and feel the presence of the divine. And then I don't need to start off believing. I just need to experiment. And through my own experiment, I'll be able to see, am I able to make that connection? It's easy, but I need to know how, as with most things. Here I am trying to make my device do something and I'm not quite sure how, and it's not quite functioning. And I call a child, and the child goes da-da-da-da-da-da, and it's done. You just need to know how. And so that's what I need to do in terms of that connection also. So the awareness of the inner being, the connection with the divine, and I'm able to draw from the source all the things that I need in my life today. Meditation will do whatever it'll do for the future, but I need help today. Maybe I need peace. Maybe I need love. And maybe all of us need spiritual power, because the start of the journey was about conscience. And where there are two steps. One is the awakening of the conscience, because it's actually gone to sleep very often. Maybe not for anyone here in this room, but definitely for a vast majority out there, the conscience has definitely gone to sleep. Just look at the headlines of what's going on, and you can see that. And so for me personally, let's deal with the world later, but for myself, that connection with the divine awakens my conscience, so that at least I can discern where it is I've moved offline into another direction. And then further, where I've been able to discern what is right, but I lack the capacity, the power to be able to follow it through. That connection will immediately, not years and years of effort, but very quickly, give me the power to be able to put through what I now know to be right. And that circle I mentioned earlier, I break the circle which has become a very vicious circle. Negative thoughts, negative actions, negative imprints, and of course, more negative thoughts. And so you go around and around. But where I've been able to put a break, the thought comes and there's a filter that's actually now functioning. And only pure thoughts, powerful thoughts, positive thoughts come through into action. The patterns begin to change, which is something that science validates today. There was a time when we thought that whatever patterns of behavior you create are going to stay with you till the end of your days. But today we know that the brain has plasticity, that patterns that have been created can be changed, but we don't always know the mechanism, but now we do. And so power from above and my own inner power awakens, and I have the strength to put what I know is right through into action. And other things get stopped by the filter. And so there's a very dramatic change in behavior. My thinking has changed, my functioning has changed, my behavior has changed. And it's something that becomes noticeable. Habits that you didn't want, you can dismiss them. You weren't able to deal with that earlier, but now you can. And it's not just habits that are substance addictions, but it's habits that are addictions in terms of the inner being. Anger, ego. How deep is my ego? I'll never know. The monkey doesn't know how long its tail is. And so the ego is the tail of the monkey. It's visible for everybody else to see, but very difficult for me to look around and see it. But even that gets dealt with, even that. Attachments, we don't even know how deep are the attachments we're dealing with. And they keep creating blocks, and I don't realize that I need to deal with them. But the power of meditation, the magic of meditation, and none of this is laborious. None of this is hard work. It happens in a very easy, natural way. The power of God's love, the power that comes through that connection. And so as that happens, the goodness of the human being begins to shine. Truly, the light shines. And so inwards, upwards, outwards, your activity has now changed. And it's bringing benefit not just to you, but to everybody else around you. And so everybody is benefiting from the transformation you're experiencing. But also it sparks inspiration in others that they would also like to do the same. So 3 easy steps for meditation: inwards, upwards, outwards. You can carry those 3 words away with you. I'm sure you can. But what we'll do is to have a meditation at the end. But before that, perhaps we have a little bit of time for questions that you may have. And of course, I've just given you a very general outline, but all our activities here are free of cost, as you know, but we'll be running meditation courses, so you'd be very welcome to come and find out more about all the things I've mentioned but haven't gone into detail tonight. But before all of that, any questions or comments that you may have?
Om Shanti, Sister Jayanti. Thank you for your wonderful sharing. I know they have a lot of questions. And those questions have been forwarded, so I'm going to ask you those questions.
How do they get forwarded? Telepathy?
No. I asked a few people today, send me your questions. So I'm assuming they would be some of the questions that people would be pondering. I just want to draw your first point that you were saying is this awakening of our consciousness, is switching on the light. How do we switch on this light? You make it sound so easy.
When I'm in the awareness of the physical form, there is no light. But when I become aware that I am that inner being, the soul that sits here in the center of the forehead, that's it. Just awareness is the light.
So this light, is it big or small or what? I mean, it sounds so abstract.
It isn't physical. It isn't something you can measure. It doesn't have length, width, breadth, or height, but it exists. It's a point. Just a point of conscient energy.
So you talked about switching on the light, and you said earlier, what is the thought I'm creating first thing in the morning? So what thoughts do you create in the morning when you wake up?
I remind myself I'm a soul. I remind myself I'm a child of God. And then further, when I have a chance to sit down properly, I remind myself that my original state of being is peace. And we'll have a little experiment with meditation in just a few minutes, and you'll be able to see that.
Now, many people are really caught up in today's society with so many activities, so many roles. How do they switch off?
The switching off is automatic. It just happens. It's like gravity. It's easy to come down. But when you want to go up, it needs energy. So switching off is just the natural default state. But if I want to switch on, I have to create the thought of who I truly am and let myself feel the energy that I am inside.
So, on that, can you lead us into this demonstration so people have an idea, just a feeling of what this inner light is?
Sure. Just sit comfortably, both feet on the ground. And let the body just relax, let your shoulders drop. I'll share a few thoughts and invite you to follow those ideas. I visualize a tiny, tiny spark in the center of the forehead. And I can feel the energy centered here. And in this energy is everything that I am. Within this being, this tiny point of light, are my thoughts, my feelings, my awareness, my conscience, my personality. I hold this awareness of this inner being and just simply becoming aware of the soul. The light shines. And as I go deeper and deeper within myself, in this awareness of the space deep inside of me, there is stillness, there is peace. And peace feels natural and comfortable. Peace is inside of me, not outside. Joy is inside of me, not out there. I discover the treasures that are hidden within me. Holding this awareness, I come back to the moment here and now, this place, but now aware of who I am, so that the light keeps shining.
Thank you. You make it so simple. Is it simple? Was that
you just
simple?
Have to remember.
Was that easy? Good. You talked about awakening the conscience. You know, you said that today's world, people's conscience has fallen asleep. So how does meditation keep the conscience awake, and how does it strengthen it?
In this awareness of the inner being, I become aware that I am the creator of my thoughts. But I also become aware that I have that capacity within myself which can direct thoughts, and that is the intellect, the buddhi. And so the first experience is that I decide to move my thoughts in the direction of my choice. Instead of going around here and there and everywhere, I just stay focused. And that capacity is the buddhi, that's able to be the reins holding the wild horses of the mind. And I learn to calm them down. The wild thoughts now become much calmer, much more peaceful. And I then begin to feel this other energy within myself, which is my ability to hold my thoughts, but also to discern the quality of my thinking. When the thoughts are just running around wild and taking over my life, I don't have that capacity. And so when I begin to calm down my thoughts, I become aware of this capacity within to be able to differentiate and see which thoughts are useful, which thoughts are not useful. And so the conscience is now activated and is beginning to exercise its capacity to manage the quality of thought. And so it's a very natural process that begins once I'm able to calm down my mind. And then as I connect with the divine, I'm able to draw power so that the conscience is stronger and stronger and is able to actually be the filter. And when it says stop, the thought stops and doesn't come through into action. A very simple thing that you can carry away from here that will activate all this. Something happens, you hear something, you see something. Don't count 10. 10 is too long. Count 3. Just internally. 1 and 2 and 3. And then ask, what should I say? What should I do? And the response will be a much sweeter one than if you just reacted. And so it's something that's been there in all cultures. Think before you speak. Think before you do. But in today's world, all of those things have been washed away. And we have to now reinvent them and recreate them for ourselves. And so just count 3 and just simply ask yourself, should I not? And the inner voice will speak. And because you've been stilling the wild thoughts, you'll be able to hear. When you've got the radio on full blast and somebody's talking quietly, how much do you hear? And so this is very, very loud. So many thoughts, very loud thoughts. And so first, just calm them down, just tame them down. And then you can start listening to the quiet voice inside.
Just picking on that, when we have created these habits that you said are very sort of stubborn, they're very rigid to remove. How do I know that I'm actually now listening to my conscience? And if I do make a mistake, and I could say to myself, well, I did listen to my conscience and nothing happened.
One part is knowing about the soul and how the mechanism of the soul works, which would be part of the meditation instruction course. Second part would be knowing gradually it happens, not overnight, but understanding more and more about the source and how to connect with the source. And the third component of all of this would be karma philosophy. What is it that is meant by good karma? What is it that's meant by negative karma? How all of that works. And so you're feeding your conscience information which is useful, so that the conscience is able to have a belief system which is based on truth and reality. Today our beliefs are based on a lot of imagination, but also a lot of hearsay. I believe what you tell me. Is it right? Is it not right? I don't know. But I'm expected to believe it. But as you study spiritual teachings, then you get to terms with what is knowledge that is useful for you and how it applies to you in your context.
Now, how often should I do this? And is it just once in the morning, or that's it, or what?
Very simple trick. Because if you do meditation in the morning, that's great. Absolutely wonderful. But through the day, the mind is caught up in 1,000 different things and you're exhausted by the end of the day. But how often do you drink water? 3 times, 5 times, 8 times a day? We are told 8 times, and some do, some don't. But however often, every time you drink some water and you're hydrating the body, at that moment also hydrate the mind. Remind yourself of the basic light that you are, so that it starts shining again. And then if you keep feeding your mind the right thoughts, hydrating your mind, by the end of the day, you're not tired, and you've been able to keep up your consciousness on a higher level.
So how do you keep this motivation going? Because, sometimes you said it's not laborious, it's quite easy. But many of us know that, like, for instance, going to the gym, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I've had enough now. So you've been doing it for almost 60 years, so what are the tips that we can have that keeps our motivation going?
See the results. Keep watching the results. When you see productivity increasing, you want to keep increasing it. And so when you see your own level of calm increase, when you see your own level of courage, fearlessness increase, you say, this is good for me. I want to have more. And so just keep seeing the results and keep thanking the one above, the gratitude and the appreciation for the results.
I want to bring the one above into the conversation. Now, you keep mentioning the divine. I'm sure many people have so many different ideas about the divine. Firstly, how do you see the divine? And secondly, how do you make the connection? Thirdly, how do you know you've made the connection?
In the awareness of the light that I am, this infinitesimal point of light which is eternal, no beginning, no end. And you can experience that if you practice. In this awareness of soul, you're able to connect with the being who is the Supreme Soul, the light who is the divine, the source of all attributes. When you feel the warmth of the sun's rays, do you have to prove it? You feel it. So when you're in contact with the Supreme, you can feel the peace, you can feel the love. It's there.
You talked about going inwards, which I like very much, then going upwards, which sounds very good, and then outwards. So how does that help us when we interact with the world out there?
It changes every interaction into one that's filled with truth, with joy, with sweetness.
And on that note, would you like to take us to the divine so that we can experience this connection? Would you like to experience this connection? Yes, there's a definite yes.
Thank you for your questions. That somehow reached you magically.
That's the power of thoughts.
Again, sit comfortably. I become aware of the inner being, the light that I am. I shine. And in this awareness, I can feel the presence of the divine. The rays of light, of love, of peace surround me. And as I absorb all these rays within my own inner being, they activate the same qualities within myself. I realize that I am a being of peace. I am a being of love. I am a being of truth. These are my original qualities. And in the presence of the divine, I can feel these. I realize that these rays from the divine are reaching not only me, but they're reaching out to the entire human family. Souls everywhere, across the planet, are able to feel the light that's reaching them. And these rays reach out to the animal kingdom, to all forms of life, and they all now feel safe, secure. These rays of light reach the plant kingdom, and this light restores harmony so that nature feels at ease and begins to respond differently to humans. The light surrounds the entire planet, and balance and harmony are restored again. I hold this vision of a world in harmony, and I bring this vision back with me into the physical dimension. And I keep reminding myself of this vision every day so that it becomes a reality. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Om Shanti. Thank you very much, Sister Jayanti. It's always a pleasure to welcome you here and to have your presence. Did everyone enjoy us sharing? So can you show your appreciation with one hand wave? Thank you very much. Now, Sister Jayanti shared a lot of things, and I'm sure some of you want to explore them further. We do a lot of courses, a lot of seminars, a lot of events. They're all available for free of charge. Too many to mention by name, so you can find the details by going on our UK website, brahmakumaris.uk, and you can find out, navigate a city near you.